podcast.
We are recording now. What's up, Fight Bros podcast listeners? We are coming at you today with Cryptid Files number 2. I told you we was going to bring these cryptid podcasts to you. And yeah, so here's the second one. As always, I'm Marcus Burks, and this is Albert Walters.
Hey. Happy to be here as always, guys.
We're coming at you today over Zoom, guys. This is weird for me and Albert.
Yeah, it's abnormal. You know, I mean, it worked out great for the schedules, but
yeah,
it's weird.
Which I've been liking doing Zoom. I feel like I have a little bit more creative power over Zoom, so it's been cool.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
But let's get into it. So today, Cryptid Files number 2, we are talking about the ultimate cryptid. I mean, this is the top of the pyramid. This is the cream of the crop, probably the most popular cryptid there is. We're talking about Bigfoot. We're talking about Sasquatch, the Yeti, the Yeren, the Yowie, as they call it in Australia. And hey, down here where we are, they call it the wood booger.
Yep.
But you know, what do you think about Bigfoot and Sasquatch, Albert? You know, are you a believer? Let's start out like that.
You know, I like to think of it more of like scientifically, and let's put evolution into the mix. I believe it's possible. I think there's enough evidence out there to suggest that if there's not any alive now, there were in the past.
Yeah.
You know, because the piece of evidence that I absolutely love is, I don't even look at the foot castings or anything like that. That's because you can fake that, and they've even proven that, like, when a bear's back or front paw steps and then its back paw overlays that step just a little bit, looks almost identical to a Bigfoot foot. So stuff like that, I brush it off my shoulder. But the ones that are so cool to me is the cave art, because it's so fascinating to see how, Native Americans and these Inuit tribes would depict themselves as stick figures on these caves. And they would depict like a round, like more of a polygon, not just sticks. That was the shape of a Bigfoot. They even had like little bits of hair coming off of it.
Cone-shaped head. Yeah.
Huh?
Like a cone-shaped head, kind of.
Yeah. Like it wasn't just a stick figure. And bears, and they would put like sitting down like how a bear walks. So like that's the coolest thing to me is for me that's enough evidence to say, hey, maybe there's none now, but I believe there were.
Yeah.
Now I think there very well is a possibility now. I mean, there's sightings almost every week. A lot of them have zero credibility, but there's still a lot of sightings, and so I think it's extremely fascinating.
Yeah, so since this is the first one about Bigfoot, we'll kind of talk to our listeners here about, what characteristics. So as you can see in the logo right here, this, JPEG of Bigfoot is, kind of what people describe. They describe a very flat-footed animal or maybe it's not even an animal, but a very flat foot, like a human being. But we're talking somewhere between 15, 22 inches. There's been foot castings as big as that. Like you stated earlier, foot castings can be faked. One of the biggest, the original thing, if people are into Sasquatch, Jerry Crew was one of the first people to discover Bigfoot footprints. He was a logger, and they ended up finding the big wooden footprints that you attach to the bottom of boots where that was faked. So
I didn't know that.
Like you said earlier, you can very easily fake the footprints. But let's get a little bit into, the body. We're talking something that's, people report between 6 and 8 feet tall. It's hard for something like that to be able to hide in the wilderness. We're talking about reddish to brown hair, black hair, in some places white hair. But just like with bear, we can have bears with white hair. depending on their environment. Over here, you got black, you got brown. So, similar aspects like that. Hands, we're talking 5 fingers like a human.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is a lot of people describe it looks like an ape, but when they zoom in on it with a camera, with their hunting scope or something, they say it has the facial features of a human. With human men, they describe our brow ridges as being very thick and flat. And that's something that a lot of people see, that brow ridges. And, a lot of people describe it as looking like a big man with hair. And that's just something interesting. Some other characteristics of it is the smell. People talk about they just smell this kind of odor that smells like a wet dog and all kinds of stuff mixed. And then another thing, this is probably the biggest thing that distinguishes this kind of creature from a bear, is the arms. They say the arms, they hang past its knees. That's the hands hang past the knees, kind of like a human with long arms, a basketball player, as some people have described it. So, any other characteristics, you would like to throw in there?
No, I think you've pretty much nailed it. Yeah, I think you've pretty much nailed it on these characteristics.
Yeah. So, man, pretty much, we hit the characteristics. I won't go, there's so much stuff I could go into Bigfoot today, but just for the podcast, we're going to kind of get into the nitty gritty stuff. So since I got Albert on the podcast today, we're going to talk about a Bigfoot kidnapping with a gentleman named Albert Ostman. This is probably the most credible Bigfoot kidnapping story that's happened ever. And, it's hard to, I don't know, it's so detailed, it's hard to distinguish if you want to not believe or believe because of how detailed it is. But I'm not the best storyteller, but I'm going to give it my best here. So Albert Ostman, he was a logger. He was a logger down in the British Columbia area. This kidnapping supposedly happened in 1924. So he's taking a vacation from his logging work, and he decides that he's going to go to the Toba Inlet in British Columbia. He had, this was a time where they were mining gold. People were finding gold everywhere. You had the people, kind of a gold rush going on, people interested in that. So he decided, he wanted to go out there and do some hiking. And he also, was wanting to strike gold. So fast forward a little bit, he ends up getting a guide. The guide is an Indian. While him and the Indian are going to his drop-off spot near these inlets, the Indian tells him of stories about, there is beasts of the mountains. There's giant men that live in these mountains. They're covered with hair. He even told Albert Ostman the story of kind of a greedy white guy. He described it because, a different time with American Indians and stuff, describing people like that. So he described it as a greedy white gentleman that owned a mine out there that kept going to the mines, and he described that white gentleman went to his mine and was never seen again. And Albert Ostman just kind of threw off these kind of things. He said, I don't believe in Sasquatch. So fast forward, the Indian drops him off where he is supposed to be in these inlets. He comes, he decamps 3 nights by himself before the alleged kidnapping. So let's start out night number 1. He says he notices, when he wakes up in the morning, he notices some stuff around his campground that's kind of been messed up. Not like a bear, but kind of messed up in a way. So he decides night number 2, he thought it was a porcupine that messed around his campsite. So night number 2, he said he had some leather shoes. So he decided that if it was a porcupine, I think he said they like leather, so he was going to put his leather shoes in his sleeping bag. Fast forward, he wakes up after night number 2. His food stuff was messed with. He said that a bag of prunes was taken, a pound of pancake flour was taken, and a few other things that kind of went through his sack pack pretty much. So okay, at this point, he's like, well, it's not a bear, it's something with intelligence. So night number 3, he actually sleeps with his gun in his sleeping bag. This is where it gets, kind of weird in the story. So in the middle of the night of night number 3, he is awakened. Something has picked him up in his sleeping bag, gun and all. He actually slept with his food sack in his sleeping bag as well. So he had gun and all in his sleeping bag. He is picked up. He says the way he's picked up, he's in a seated position in the middle of the night. So something like grabbed the top of his bag and he just fell into a seated position. He actually states that he was sitting on his feet inside the sleeping bag. Very uncomfortable position. So from there, he claims that he was dragged. He claims that it was something big, breathing heavy, like he could hear the breaths of the animal when he was being dragged. He claims that he was dragged for about 3 hours. I couldn't imagine. He even said at some points the animal would start or whatever was holding him at the time, he didn't know at the time, was jogging. So you're holding a grown man in a sleeping bag with other stuff, supposedly jogging, dragging this. So he said it was about 3 hours. So fast forward there, he says he finally gets to a stop. He's dropped off. It's in a dark place. He says it starts to get a little lighter and he sees a silhouette of 4 beings. He looks at his watch. It's 4:25. The light starts to come out. He says that now he realized that he was in the presence of these mountain people that the Indians talked about. He says there was a humongous one that was the male. He says he could see genital features, that it had a penis. And the female, he said he could see her as well. He could tell by the definition of the breast, and 2 younger beings. He described the younger beings as being around 6 foot tall. He described the father, as he said, being around 7, 8 foot tall. And there they are in this cave. This is where it gets real too as well. He's in this cave, and he says that the kids are kind of timid, and he kind of feels like he's kind of being held hostage in there. You know what I'm saying? He feels like they don't know what he is, and they're trying to figure him out. So he says that the kids took some of his stuff. He had skull, and as we'll get further in this story, the skull turns out to be something useful. But he said the kids were kind of interested in his skull can. They kept playing with it. Something that he noted was that they all talked in this type of chatter, which in the cryptozoology field they call samurai chatter, which is where they kind of mumble like, I'm not even going to do it, but as you can imagine,
Oh, we got to get an example, man.
Samurais kind of grunt like, it's kind of like that, just like chatter. And that's what he described as they were speaking some type of language to each other, but as now, cryptozoologists call that samurai chatter because they have recorded it a number of times. This is where it gets very detailed as well. He describes why he's in this cave, that they have roots laying around that they eat. He said that they have beds, like they have bedding made out of moss. He said that the moss, they actually had blankets that looked like they were woven out of moss. He said it was very detailed and very intelligent. He said that it seemed like the place that they lived in, they did not stay there for long. He said it seemed like they moved out for food. But he said he was in there for 6 days. He said he witnessed the mom come back in with moss, with roots. So he said they ate a lot of roots, which if you do a lot of reading on Bigfoot, the meat eating is not really recorded there. So, and I mean, if you eat meat, you're out in the open hunting stuff. So, I mean, this would make sense. But let's get down to the moral of the story. He's fed up. On day 5, he actually tried to get out. He grabbed his rifle and he started walking towards the exit of the cave. He claims that the father Bigfoot that was really big stood in front of him and put his hands up. And he said that he pointed towards the exit, trying to let him know he wanted to leave. And he said that the father Bigfoot actually responded in some type of chatter, but he said the chatter came out to be something like soka, soka. That's what he claimed came out from that language, or what he heard. And I actually tried to look up if soka can be translated to anything, and I don't actually think it's translated in any language. So, you know, that would kind of make some merit, I guess. But from this point, he kind of realized he's not going to be able to leave, but he was fed up at that point. So on the, I believe, night of day 5 or the morning of day 6, he's having some of his meals that he still had in his bag, and he acts like it's really good, and he acts like he's putting that skull in his mouth and kind of acting like it tastes real good. From that point on, he gives the father and son become interested in the skull. He said that the father actually ate a whole roll. Now, I'm not too familiar with skull, but I'm assuming what you can buy like a roll of 5 or something. But back in 1924, a roll was probably not. Was it maybe in a can, or I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know about back then, but how you buy a roll now is actually considered like a pumpkin roll. You know, like when you have a pumpkin roll, it's all rolled up. You have the cylinder,
Yeah.
and you cut it up. You can, if you imagine each cut piece as a can, that's a can. But when you put them all together, it's a roll. So a roll is, I think, like 10 cans or something like that.
Yeah, but he claims
But
that
I don't know. I don't know what it was back then.
he claims that this was kind of his plan. He decided, you know, us humans, if you swallow a skull, you get sick. Just a little bit of it. And he said that the Bigfoot ate the whole roll and even licked out like the can. He licked it all gone. He said from this point on, he started feeling the father's eyes started kind of rolling around. He started feeling sick. And he says that the father ended up kind of not really, I guess, passing out, sitting down. So he said from that point on, he decided to make a run from it. Now, so he ends up getting out of the cage. Now, in some stories that are told about this situation, supposedly when he starts running out of the cave, the mother starts coming after him, the female's Bigfoot. From that point on, he fires a gunshot, and it startled her, and she didn't pursue. So he got away in that story. He actually didn't come out and actually tell about this story. I think it was 20 to 30 years later. But like I was telling you, he signed, like, I think it was called an arbiter, and me and you both said we didn't know what that meant. But he until his deathbed, he claimed that this was a legit story. And as we know, British Columbia is a hot spot for Bigfoot activity.
Yeah.
Those places, California, British Columbia. So yeah, this is probably I remember reading about this story in high school. I used to read books all the time because, you know, in high school, the teacher would give us, you know, something to work on and a worksheet to do, and then the rest of the class, you don't have nothing to do. So I remember going to the library at Pulaski High School. I ain't never used it before. I found like a Bigfoot section. It was probably 7, 8 books on Bigfoot. This was one of the first stories I started reading about, so this has always kind of intrigued me. So I know I've talked a lot, Albert. So hearing that, I want to give you the floor now. What do you think about that, man? Like, isn't that just wild? Or do you totally just think that that's crap? Or
you know, I'll say if it's true. I mean, I get it. It makes sense. You know, like you do get sick. You know, it hurts your stomach. So like, I get all that. You know, I just have a few questions. I don't really know if I believe it or not. Like one of my questions is, if this encounter actually had happened and this guy was carried in his nightsack for hours and hours deep into the British Columbia woods, you know, my question is, how did he get out? You know, like how?
Oh, he said that they dropped him once they got to the destination. They let his thing go. He claimed he had a compass, so he was an experienced woodsman. He was a logger, so he was experienced in the woods. And I did leave some of this stuff out, so I can answer some of this stuff. But he had a compass. He said that the whole time he was being carried, he was kind of trying to, in his head, He looked at his compass trying to see which way he was going, which direction, trying to like calculate how many hours to miles. When he got out, he ended up getting to some part of civilization because he kind of realized if he got to the top of one of the mountains that he was near, then he thought he would get near civilization, which he eventually did.
Okay.
He actually said the way that he ended up getting back to civilization is he heard something real loud in the woods, and it ended up being a logging truck or something like that. So he said he told the logger that he was like a prospector of the logging areas, and he got lost in the woods. He said he was embarrassed because around that time, you know, sightings weren't, you know, as normal as they are now. So he was embarrassed, so he told that, and then, you know, he didn't come out with it for 20, 30 years later. He actually said that he would have tried to cut his way out of the sleeping bag while he was being carried, but he was actually sitting on his pocket knife.
Yeah.
And he couldn't move. The thing that intrigued me, dude, is, and I've heard this many times before with like, just reading about Bigfoot encounters, is seeing them have like eating sweet roots, eating spicy roots, nuts. You know, we're talking about stuff that's not putting them, if you're going out there hunting for deer, you know, you might be at a chance of being seen by humanity. But for something to be that big and tall, you would have to think it's got to eat meat some way.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I don't know if I think it's true or not. It's kind of I see where there's some credibility to it, but also I think I see a few flaws.
Yeah.
Where it's like, and I'm not saying if you hold on to something for 30 years it's fake. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But it does make you a bit suspicious. Because as time goes on, you start to remember things differently. So you wonder things like that.
Yeah.
Like how accurate is the story compared to like what you remember.
So I would like to see like a documentary made on this, man, or a movie.
Yeah.
I really think it would be something interesting. And, you know, I was listening to a podcast on it earlier today just to kind of get my facts straight, because I knew a little bit about it, but just wanted to make sure I had my facts straight. And I think the guy in the podcast was reading off something that his nephew, so he had told his nephew, and I guess his nephew's still alive. So it'd be interesting to have like a documentary or some type of movie on this, you know, from his family's perspective.
Yeah.
Because this is really interesting. This is probably one of the most interesting things I've read about in the Bigfoot world.
Yeah. Well, you know, and kidnappings aren't uncommon either. I mean, they are uncommon, but like
there's a lot of encounters where they're kind of have an interest like we do in them.
Yeah, exactly. You know, because where they are so human-like, them to take a human, I don't think is uncalled for, because that's our idea. If we saw one, we'd want to take it.
Yeah.
Put it in a room and look at it, study it. And it seems like that's what they were doing with this guy.
He stated that a reason why he took so long to come out as well is he said that he knows that if people would have went out there and found him, that he said he didn't want to see him in a zoo in a cage forever.
Yeah.
And that's what he stated. And, you know, once he came out, he said, I know that there are 4. He said by now, you know, just me kind of picturing how older those 2 were, there might be just 2, but he said, I know they're real, and there are at least 4.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. I've really liked to read about that and look more into it. There's a couple of things out about it, but not much, you know, a couple of YouTube videos, a couple of articles. I feel like there could be more if somebody could like dive deep and write a book on it or something if they could get enough information.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, you have any more thoughts on that?
On that story, no.
Okay.
No, I have nothing else to add to that one.
So let's get into this, man. I'm excited for this. We got, you know, people try to act like Bigfoot sightings just happened in California, British Columbia, you know, Florida, some of these, you know, areas out west. Nah, man, we got them here in Virginia.
We've got them here in the county.
Huh?
We've got them here in the county.
We've got them here in Pulaski County. One sighting that is accepted by the BFRO, which is the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. That is the top of the line. They let people submit encounters to them. Most of the time they follow up with a phone call, or if it's big enough, they will send a person out there, and they don't accept all encounters. So this is, for the Bigfoot world, this is the top of the line, the BFRO. So yeah, I actually have a newspaper article and a photo of a Bigfoot of an alleged Bigfoot that was allegedly captured on a trail camera in Wytheville County, which is, I live in Pulaski County.
Not really our county, but our area.
So Wytheville County is about 20 minutes away from us, so right in our area. So this was taken on a trail cam in 2013. This is actually the original newspaper article from it. As you can see right here, very long arms, looks like an ape. It's on all fours in the picture. Kind of looks like it's stumbling on or looking for something on the ground, but it is on all fours. You can see a little bit of the head in there, kind of that rounded shaped head. The foot, you can see, looks like flat looking feet. So I just want to read what the article says. This was submitted by the Southwest Times. This is our local newspaper in Pulaski. It says, can you help identify the picture shown here? Is it unclear if this is a unverified picture of Bigfoot? It was recently discovered on a trail cam placed in the nearby mountings. It is surprising to say the least. When I discovered this image on the camera's disc, I didn't know what in the world it could be. It appears that the right arm shows fingers, that it is grasping the base of a tree. As we just heard in that last story, is it possibly getting some tree roots? It also has elongated feet similar to a man's. Its fur is matted on the back but thin on the arms and legs. Unfortunately, the head and face are not shown. I think the person that had this on their trail cam, they didn't want their name released, but they said, I think it must be a bear. It has to be a bear, does it not? I hunt this area annually and have seen no Bigfoot. I have seen bear scats and tracks. No identified tracks or droppings or any indications of large upright predators in the woods have ever been found that I know of. It says your input would be appreciated. So we'll just show this again. I'm going to post it on the podcast as well, so you'll be able to see like a more high quality image. But
yeah, like that's clearly not a bear.
Yeah.
If you look at the right arm, bear's arms aren't that long and skinny.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's what people try to say. This is like a bear with mange or something. I mean, I've seen online like bears that do not have hair.
Yeah. They're still fat, man.
Like they're
fat. They have their arms aren't that long and skinny.
It's scary looking, but to me, like, look at these arms. They look like orangutan arms, basketball player arms. They're just long. Like
long, skinny.
Whatever this is, if it stood on 2 feet, its hands are coming down past its knees.
Yeah.
Like it said in the article, fingers. Like you can clearly make out fingers. Feet, you can see that it's a flat foot. You can see the heel kind of rounding at the back. And then the head, you kind of see that rounded head, just like in the logo right there, which that's just a JPEG picture, a curated picture, but
not a real photo.
Yeah. That's a real photo of the cryptid.
That's a real photo.
The cryptid poodle there. That's a real photo.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. I mean, I take this. I mean, there's a couple of things that this could be. I think it's hard for me to believe it's a bear, number one, but that's one way you could go. Another way you could go is, people do buy monkeys off the black market and stuff. You're not supposed to have stuff like that, but they get loose. I mean, we seen somebody had a pet tiger the other day in the news, and it got loose, and it was running around a neighborhood. And so, could this have been a pet that got loose? Or, is this a juvenile Bigfoot? Bigfoot encounters have been reported that they do come on all fours sometimes.
How big do you think that is?
I don't know, man. It's really hard to tell from the picture. If I had
Let's
to do my best
show
guess,
the photo again.
yeah.
Let's see the photo.
If I had to do my best guess, I would want to say that's around 4 or 5 foot.
See, yeah, I'd say closer to 5.
Yeah.
But you know, man, I don't think it looks like it's crawling. I think it looks like it's digging, personally. Because for me, it looks like the right knee is on the ground, and it looks like the right hand is like grabbing at something, kind of
Yeah.
digging.
So, as we discussed earlier, it's grabbing onto a tree root, the gentleman who had the camera, or it's grabbing onto a tree stump. Is it digging for roots? Is that part of its diet?
Yeah, and like you said, the right hand looks like fingers. So who's to say it could be a monkey? It just doesn't look like a monkey. It looks like a hairy person.
And that's the thing, man. Even if it is a monkey, we're not supposed to have, even if it was proven to be some type of chimpanzee, we're not supposed to have that in Southwest Virginia.
That's because someone let it loose.
Yeah.
Like ball pythons, we've seen them in the wild in Virginia. We don't have those.
So the crazy thing about this, man, so this photo right here, 3 days after this photo was taken, 3 days after this was taken, we have our first BFRO approved encounter in Pulaski County. The eyewitness of this, he did provide his name, so he wasn't afraid to say his name. His name was Leroy Early of Robinson Tract Community in Pulaski. He says that he was taking his dog out on Wednesday night. It was just a couple of days after this picture came out. He says around 8:30 to 9 p.m. when he noticed a large furry animal standing in his backyard. He heard a rasping noise similar to a grunt. We hear about grunts a lot, kind of an aggression saying get away with Bigfoot. From the edge of the yard near the tree line is where he heard the grunt. He looked up and saw an animal standing upright that he estimated to be between 6 and 7 feet tall. This creature that we had in that picture, it could have been 6 feet tall, maybe.
Yeah.
The animal
had long legs, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The animal was covered in thick fur and apparently investigated his chicken coop near the chicken feeder near the coop. His little dog scampered back towards the house, whimpering with her tail between her legs after catching a scent of the unknown animal. He decided to join her because of his safety and made sure his shotgun was nearby. He said it then ran quickly into the woods out of sight, and it ran on 2 legs. Later that evening, him and his wife heard what sounded like a thump in the trees close to his backyard. He insists this is a true account of what he had that night. He stated that he would have not called to report the sighting had it been for the picture published in the Southwest Times on August 26th. Oh, and this was posted September 9th. So we're looking at what, a week and a half?
26th and 29th?
The August 29th and then September 9th.
Oh, no, that's
20
days.
Yeah.
22nd and 9th?
So could this creature have been in Wytheville and came over to Pulaski?
Yeah.
That's interesting. What's interesting about this encounter is he claims that it was investigating his chicken coop.
Yeah.
That's what I find very interesting because a lot of encounters people describe coming out there, their chickens' heads are like ripped off and their bodies are taken.
Well, I'll tell you, if you see anything where it says a chicken's head is taken off, I'm not going to think it's a Bigfoot because for hundreds of years, people have had that problem and proven that it's weasels. Weasels will come into your chicken coop. The weasel literally, squirm their way into the coop and just bite chicken heads off. And so you'll have missing chicken heads, bodies that are just scattered because literally they still run.
Yeah.
Like the saying chicken with its head cut off is real. So like Bob Fleet, when I'd watch his house, I've picked up so many dead chicken bodies because they were free range chickens. And, some nights, you wondered what it was, and then we found out that it was weasels that would come in there and just bite their heads off, and they were scattered all over the place.
Yeah.
So like, if anyone's like, oh, it might have been a Bigfoot, no, that's one that I'll never get behind.
Yeah.
But certainly understand the thought behind it. Like, hey, other than biting the heads off, if someone said they had a Bigfoot like attacking their chicken coop, I'd get it. Like, hey, it's free food.
Yeah.
It's trapped food. It's a good source.
And as we see,
So,
like in the encounter earlier, it seems like they're very kind of interested.
yeah,
They might see a house, chicken coop, just be
yeah,
interested what it is.
yeah.
Uh,
Wasn't there a encounter where around that same time where people were looking at a house out in Robinson Track or Wytheville where they were like doing a showing on a house and saw what they thought was a Bigfoot on the back porch. Do you remember that?
I'm
Because
not
also I remember something about Gatewood.
Yeah, so once this actually came out, they never showed this picture on Finding Bigfoot or anything, I think, but the Finding Bigfoot team did come out near the Gatewood Reservoir,
Yeah,
and I'm not sure it wasn't Pulaski County, but I guess the Gatewood Reservoir runs pretty large, I guess, big area, but I don't think they were in Pulaski County. But they mentioned the Gatewood Reservoir, and I mean this photo right here was the main reason that they ended up showing that on Finding Bigfoot.
hmm
But I wanted to get into, so that was from 2013. I wanted to, go over some encounters. We have encounters as recent as 2019, 2 years ago, right next to us, counties next to us. So this picture right here was taken in Wytheville. We have a recent encounter, which BFRO classifies it as a Class A encounter, the highest, most credible one. So this was posted in 2019, April 10th in Wythe County. The location details, it is on Queen Knob Road beside a Hidden Valley Road in Wytheville, Virginia. You ever heard of Queen's Knob?
not the road specifically.
Okay, so this is what was said. My wife and I were driving around, and we were on a back road out in Wytheville, Virginia, on Queens Road. It was dark out, but not too late. As we turned the corner, my wife and I saw in the middle of the road, it was about 4 feet tall, like that picture. It was not a dog or a four-legged animal. It was on two legs. It saw our car, ran and jumped over the fence on two legs like it was nothing. It pumped its arms as it ran like a human, like a track runner, and then jumped over the fence without using any effort at all. It then proceeded to run through the field with the sheep as we lost sight about it. My wife and I have no doubt in our minds what we saw that night. Yeah, he said his headlights were running and his headlights pointed right on it, so they got a good view of it. It says there were sheep in the environment, food source. There's also a forest which heads towards a deer farm near Bland, Virginia. So yeah.
Oh wow.
That's 2019 in Wytheville. I find that very interesting because as we keep coming back to this picture, man, this is what we're estimating to be, 4 or 5 foot tall, and that's what those people said they seen in Wytheville in 2019.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
This next encounter was in 2011. This kind of hits close to me and you. We've been near this spot. So this was in June 10th, 2011. This was in Fort Chiswell, the fish hatchery. This was on the freaking fish hatchery, man. We've been there a couple of times.
Yeah.
So this is what was said. It was at that fish hatchery that me and you've been to a couple of times. I was fishing behind the fish hatchery in Fort Chiswell. My friend and I were coming out at dusk, and I said they were out there at night, so they were walking down a trail to get out of the forest from the fish hatchery. This guy says, I was feeling weird at the time because something didn't feel right. He felt like something was following him, and he felt like something was looking at him in the woods. So he let his friend know. This isn't printed good, man.
No, you're okay.
Yeah, this didn't print good at all. So he felt like something was watching him near this fish hatchery. He said he was briskly walking backwards. He pulled his knife out for fear of his life, and he says that he turned around and saw a 7 to 8 foot tall silhouette. He described it as being very tall and broad across the shoulders. He only saw it for 3 to 4 seconds and then ran back to his truck in fear of his life. On a later incident, he says he was carp fishing at the fish hatchery again, and he had 2 friends with him, and he claimed that something threw a humongous rock at them. And this is considered a Class B sighting, so they're not rating it as the most credible, but they still accepted it, and that was in Wytheville as well.
Yeah.
I had one more I kind of wanted to go over that I found. So 2000 and actually, we got time for 2 more. I got 2 more. So this is a Class A. This was in Floyd, Virginia in 2016 on August 2nd. This was an 11-year-old girl who reported this. So Floyd, nearest road 706. You familiar with that, Floyd?
Route 706. Yeah. State road.
Okay.
Yeah.
That she said, "Hi, my name is." She blurred out her name. Didn't want to express that. She says, "Today, my 11-year-old daughter saw something in our yard. She was looking out the window and saw it walking. It turned around and looked right at her. She says she could see hair, black and dark brown all over its face from 30 feet away. It had medium-sized eyes, and she said no way in the world it was a bear. It saw her, then turned around to fast walk down the hill on 2 legs. It went behind the fence at our house. The fence is covered with some weeds and some spots are open. It was crouched down and proceeded to peek at her as it worked its way down the fence. When it got around the corner, it stood up and ran down the hill out of sight on 2 feet. I don't know what she saw, but she says it is as big as me, and I am 6'1". And they said there was an overcast and it was raining near this. They said this is near the Little River. Me and you are familiar with the Little River as well.
Yeah.
And they actually classified this as a Class A.
Wow.
So that's interesting. Obviously, the 11-year-old girl, I guess you would try to get into, whoever questioned her must have felt like she was pretty mature.
Yeah, pretty mature. Yeah.
Responded on the questioning. Last one I'm going over, man, this was submitted by a witness. This was submitted in 2020. This encounter happened in October 2019. This one is in Roanoke near the Blue Ridge Parkway. Location details, it is a neighborhood next to William Byrd High School. I've never been to William Byrd, I don't think, but I feel like that's out in the countryside of Roanoke.
I believe so.
It was last year around 2019, mid-October, near the Blue Ridge Parkway. Me and my boyfriend were working for the Roanoke Times delivering newspapers when this encounter happened. We deliver anywhere from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. We were almost done with the route when we turned down the road near this dead-end maintenance road. Since there were houses at the end, it was around 3:30 to 4:30 a.m. when we was going around that maintenance road. My boyfriend was going down the gravel end of the maintenance road. The headlights caught a glimpse of this thing standing at where the grass met the road. It stood about 7 feet tall and took up off the hill. It kind of walked fast, not necessarily ran. It was dark brown and had shaggy hair like fur. It was on 2 feet and walked like a human with its arms swinging back and forth, like the Patterson-Gilliland film. You probably saw that. That's one of the main characteristics. I screamed out for my boyfriend to stop the car. His reaction time kicked in and it already made its way up the hill. My boyfriend positioned the car so the lights would shine up the hill, and we also got a glimpse of it, and we saw 2 bright red glowing eyes. The glowing reflection of the eyes is in animals, your dogs,
and people.
a lot of different animals.
Yeah, sometimes people.
What was strange is it was hiding behind a huge tree, and how high the eyes were from the ground. It was about 7 foot tall. You could clearly see the eyes blink. We sat there for approximately 10 minutes and decided to finish up the route and come back. We did eventually come back, and we got done with the last house. It was gone. Maybe less than a month before we had an encounter, we heard tree knocks on our route from home. It scared us so bad when we heard it. We just bagged up the newspaper and threw it on the side of the road. They said there was also a lot of deer while in this route, food source as well. And that was considered a Class A. 2019, man.
That's awesome.
2 years ago, so that's crazy.
That is crazy.
That, I don't know, those are all, that one that I just read from Roanoke, that was pretty detailed, I felt like. But it's interesting, man. You know what I've been wanting to do is I've been wanting to kind of take some of these sightings off the BFRO page that are near us and kind of just try to figure out where these areas are. And, I mean, obviously not go to somebody's house, but, some of these places in the woods and some of these roads and kind of go out there, man, maybe camp out, post it on the YouTube page, go out there, try some tree knocks, try some calls. It'd be interesting.
Oh, yeah. Well, in a few weeks when we go backpacking, you'll have a lot of opportunity.
That's what I was going to add, man. I'm ready to go backpacking. I got me some freaking some foot casting. I'm gonna start carrying that when I'm hiking now.
Yeah. How heavy is that? How heavy is that?
Oh, it's not. It's just in a little box.
Oh, okay. That's not bad.
Yeah, just use a bottle of water. It's kind of handy. So.
Okay, yeah, that's not bad at all.
Be good.
Oh man, I'm excited. Like I told you, and I showed you, I printed off the map, which I'm excited about because for years there hasn't been like a trail map of this trip we're doing. There's always been like written instructions, but nothing like clear. And then now there's finally a map, and I'm so happy about that.
Yeah, I know, man. So me and Albert, we won't say where it is, but we're gonna go backpacking somewhere in the Appalachian Mountains.
Almost 40 miles in 2 days.
Yeah, and we're just gonna get out there with nature. I might do some calls. We might do some knocks. But we're just gonna be out there with nature, which that's what most of the people on the expeditions do, anyways.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be fun, man. I'm thinking we'll start at like 4 or 5 a.m. on day one. Really put in as many miles as we can.
Yeah.
And then just go till we can't go no more, and call it a night.
Yeah, maybe one of us will get kidnapped like Albert Ostman.
I'll watch him take you away, man.
Those Bigfoot love them some Alberts, man.
I won't tell him my name.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll keep him away.
But yeah, guys, from today's podcast, look a little bit more into this photo. This was taken in Wytheville. Again, you can go to the bfro.net, and you can find encounters. It divides it into state. You can go to counties. That's how I found all these near us. It's as recent as 2019. And then I also want to recommend a book. It's called The Essential Guide of Bigfoot. It's by one of my favorite cryptozoologists, Ken Gerhardt. This is if you're just interested in Bigfoot, this is a great place to start. I mean, he literally goes into where the sightings first started happening. He goes about the weight, the diet, sexual interests, all that kind of stuff that he's gathered. It really digs deep. And I would encourage anybody who's interested. I know we probably don't have too many people, but you can get it on Amazon. It's not that expensive. It's like $15-20. So that's if you like to read in your pastime, that'd be neat. But Albert, buddy, I want to thank you for coming on today, man. This was a good one.
Absolutely, man.
I want to get you on, talk about some Bigfoot. And
I like it. It was we had no itinerary. I think it was cool. I think it seemed more organic.
Yeah, and I can't wait for our backpacking trip. Hopefully we'll see this.
Yeah. Oh, if we do, it's going to be awesome. So I'm excited to see it.
But we'll end it at that today. I'll go ahead and end the recording.
All right.